joining us online. Technology and sustainability are the themes to round off our afternoon discussions. The next panel, Deep Tech at Scale, will explore technology as an enabler for solving many of the world's most pressing challenges: food security, inequality, health, climate, to name a few. How are investors and how are policymakers prioritizing where to spend and where to innovate? Simon Robinson is Reuters executive editor and will introduce the speakers for this next panel. Simon.
Everyone, hopefully everyone's had a coffee, and as people trickle in, I'm sure that we're going to have a great panel this afternoon. This panel looks at AI, crypto, different technologies, and this region's part in those worlds. So I want to begin. I'll introduce each panelist as I kind of go to the first question. So Chiara, if I could begin with you. So just to introduce, Chiara Marcati is the Chief AI Advisory and Business Officer for AI71, which is Abu Dhabi's relatively new company that builds AI products and advises other governments and companies. Chiara used to work for McKinsey for 20 years and has advised organizations and governments across the Middle East. So Chiara, let's begin with you. What is it about this region that makes it well-placed in the world of AI?
I think, in short, first of all, thank you for having me and welcome everybody. So I think, in short, is really the leadership ambition. UAE has the ambition to truly transform itself into a knowledge economy. And when I say knowledge economy, it starts to be worldly recognized for its knowledge, in this case of AI, and really export that knowledge. Now, how do I go about that? And I think why it's special is because they have the vision and the power to work across the entire stack of the AI. If you think about it, there are champions that are playing at the bottom of the stack with the data center, with the infrastructure, with alliances with big hyperscaler. And then there are companies and visionaries that even started to work with effort in R&D with the LLM. We had the two foundational models, and we have one, Falcon, that actually had amazing releases and amazing review. And Falcon was created in the Advanced Technology Research Council that was created in Abu Dhabi with the spirit to truly forge R&D. So for me, the vision and the desire and the investment in R&D that we have seen across all the elements of value stack is really positioning the UAE in a special place. And in fact, if you look at all the attention that it's getting globally, it's actually quite significant.
I guess also we know that AI requires a lot of electricity. And one thing this region has a lot of is power generation.
I think that makes it easy, but I think it's definitely only one of the enablers in place. For me, really the vision and the passion that I have seen and the desire to invest in building local champion and attracting talent, which has been quite hard in the region, to build a local champion that can play globally at scale, I think is quite tremendous.
Let's come back to the talent question in a little bit. Ayah Bdeir, I want to come to you. So Ayah is an advisor to Mozilla, which many people will know, a free software community founded almost 30 years ago now. And you're also a tech entrepreneur. You've done a lot in your career to kind of break down the barriers between people and tech, including founding a company called Littlebits, which is an electronic building block that is used by millions of children around the world. And you have a kind of scary number of patents to your name. So I'm interested in the spread of AI, thinking about this region, and you do a lot of thinking, I guess, especially in terms of kind of open access, thinking about what models will be used. If all the models that are going to be used here in the kind of growth of AI are based on Western inputs, Western models, is that going to kind of tell us about that? Tell us about how the UAE and the Gulf more generally needs to think about how it builds its own AI industries?
So thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I've been an advocate for open source for kind of my entire career. For those that may not know, open source is this ideology and this community practice that believes that sharing innovation elevates all boats, and it really started in software, but I was part of starting the open hardware movement. There are open source movements across kind of many sectors. And specifically, I think the UAE had the foresight to invest and think about open source AI. So Falcon, that Chiara just talked about, the large language model that was invented at TII, was immediately open sourced. And it was at a time where the UAE was not known as an AI player, but it was able to rise up in the leaderboards and rise up in the attention of the world in terms of AI because they open sourced the model, and suddenly millions of people around the world started using it and really kind of relating to the UAE with it. So I think their foresight and investment in open source is a big one. The second one is really the UAE tends to not be, especially these days compared to the US, but tends to not be self-centered. There are 200 nationalities here in the UAE. There are people from all over. There's a really nice balance of at once wanting to cater and accept and include all these kind of diverse cultures and people and languages, and also preserve their own. And so there's a big investment in Arabic. There's a big investment in these kinds of topics, which I think we'll talk about later. So I think those two components make that the UAE really kind of positioned itself as a player in a very kind of crowded and competitive AI
When you
market.
look at the amount of money, though, spent every year on AI, the US is so far ahead of everyone else. I think China is in second place. But is there a danger with the kind of the growth of AI around the world that we end up in some ways with it dominated completely almost by one country?
It's absolutely a concern, and it is a concern that we are living with right now. The majority of AI systems that we're using were made in the West, made in America. They have not only bias of language systems way of thinking, but also the epistemology of the way of Western thinking, the scientific method and practices that follow. And so there are hosts of regions, countries, cultures around the world that have very, very rich cultures, ancestral cultures, like the Arab world, like the Latin world, like the Indian world, that are centuries of years old, but are not available on the internet or in books in the same ways. And so they're going to be left out of AI if something is not done about them. And so efforts that really focus on those are important. It's something that I'm personally extremely interested in, this idea of ancestral intelligence.
Okay. Haiyang Ru, let's come to you. You're the CEO of HashKey Exchange, which is a Hong Kong-based digital asset trading platform that serves both retail and institutional investors. And you've got a long history and experience in fintech, in strategy operations. You used to work for Ant Group's Alipay. I'd like to ask you a little bit about regulation in this part of the world. Your company is part of a bigger group, the HashKey Group. You've only been around for 2 years, something like that?
Our Hong Kong exchange is into operation for 2 years.
Okay.
But our whole group is about 8 years.
Okay.
We are still a young company, but we are licensed in Hong Kong, Singapore, Tokyo, and Dubai. We are the only group with all licenses in all onshore financial centers across Asia.
So as you move into the Gulf, which is relatively new, what kind of regulatory framework do you face? What are the challenges around regulation? And I should point out that mostly we're talking about cryptocurrency here.
In terms of regulation or the regulators, I would say overall speaking, the regulators are open-minded, very accessible, and also business-friendly. However, we probably need more clarity regarding the regulations around the stable coins, around the equity tokens, around security tokens, and also the digital assets. Because across the whole region, different regulators have different sophistication levels. And we do notice that going forward, the cross-jurisdiction collaboration could be a challenge. So we are working with different regulators to have some kind of like a joint cooperation to push into a more collaboration model. Because you know the essence of the business for the asset trading and the custody is all about scale effect. However, the regulators tend to be very fragmented. So that's the reason why we need more communications across the region to push into that direction.
So a company like yours, Hong Kong-based, clearly connecting China to parts of the world, I assume including places like Africa, and you see this part of the world as a kind of key pathway to those other markets as well. Would your company like, for instance, a regulator that kind of regulates this market across the Gulf so that all the countries in the Gulf would get together? I know.
That would be a slightly challenge, I guess. Right now, we are...
Well, a challenge for the governments, but would you like it as a company?
It's hard to say, frankly speaking. It's like a double-edged sword, right? It increases your convenience, but on the other hand, it also increases the communication costs to get everyone aligned, especially on the same table, bring people together. And right now, we are moving into Southeast Asia and into, Gulf area as well, to form the regional payment and investment network. We do see different levels of sophistication. So maybe I think the communication between the regulators is more important. They should have like more frequent communications on routine basis regarding the asset custodians, regarding the money transfers, and also the money laundering services, and also these kind of activities around the crypto. That will be helpful to the companies to come into the play.
Interesting. Chiara, coming back to you, AI71, which again is Abu Dhabi's company that is really going to push AI in this part of the world. It began and beyond. It began only about 2 years ago. And just stepping back for a second, we know in this part of the world that the history often of expansion into new industries is government-led. Governments will set up companies, we see it in the airline business and many, many others, set up businesses, often make them very successful, and then hope that private money comes in afterwards and grows that industry. That's a model that has worked often around this region. Is it a model that lends itself to the tech world and the AI world, given how quickly that industry is changing?
Well, the reality is that most likely no, and that's why our shareholders and our, let's say, the fathers of the company decide to operate completely different. So if I talk about briefly of the history of AI71 as a representation of how they're thinking about that, is we were born a couple of years ago, and a few months ago we actually became fully private. Because there is a belief that as a private company is the way to go into the tech, probably soon, hopefully, why not looking for external funding, doing partnership, thinking about joint venture, and I think retaining that ability, I think, is fundamental. And I think if I think again about the AI71, this also gives us the ability to attract talent and to work with organization in a much different way. Like I'm having acting conversation with the company international that they know and feel that they're talking with a private company that has a P&L, that has pressure in top line and bottom line like other, and they understand that their pressure are pushing me to deliver, and they know that they get high quality. In addition to that, this setup will also allow us to truly attract real talent. Like, I think this is another big difference, the I-71 and the way the UAE is looking at the tech world versus the rest, is 80% of our people are actually imported from abroad. 80% of our people are tech engineer people. And this is, I think, is fundamentally different than the usual model that you were talking about that was used in more traditional sectors.
Just on that point of talent, let's dig into that a little bit more. I want to hear from all of you on that. Does the new relatively new U.S. administration's clamp down on visas for people, say, from India or around the world to go and work in Silicon Valley, does that help a place like Abu Dhabi?
I mean, definitely we have seen, let's say, an increased level of application from folks from the US. But the reality, I think we still need to work a lot on building a hub to be truly attractive. So we have that on the positive side. I think that give it a push to true great talent. I mean, we had former team members that were part of the building the Copilot. We had former DeepMind head of research that actually joined us. Maybe for foresight, maybe for fear, maybe for desire, maybe for sharing the vision. Definitely, I think the new administration helped. But the reality is, I think what we really need to do now here is truly building a community and a hub to start to attract people more at scale. So I welcome additional initiative from the administration in the US to give us a further push.
Ayah Bdeir, what's your view on talent in this region? If you look at many of the countries, the actual number of nationals of each country is relatively small. In fact, in some cases, quite small. The population overall has grown a lot in the last 20 years or so. But can you build an AI industry with so few people?
I think the individual talent can be headhunted, and that can be how you start a talent market, and that is what the Emirates has done really well and attracted very key people, including Chiara and others, to come here who've done an incredible job. The key is to sustain it, you'd need an ecosystem where we were just talking about it actually right before. People move from one company to another and are able to, somebody, let's say, grows up in a startup, becomes knowledgeable about a topic, then will leave and start their own company and hire some people, and then they start another company. This is what they call in the US the big story of the PayPal mafia, being kind of attached to the kind of birth of Silicon Valley. And so Silicon Valley has a really, really rich ecosystem. Entrepreneurs, incubators, companies that would hire them, but also the lawyers that work with the startups, also the accountants that know how to work with startups, also VCs, obviously, who are there. And then across the US, I've been seeing it kind of happen more and more across different places. In New York, for example, they call it Silicon Alley, same thing. And in Europe, obviously, you have many of those ecosystems that have been growing over the past 10 years. In the Emirates, they've done a really good job cultivating that. And so when is the tipping point that it starts being kind of self-proliferating, that you don't have to do as much headhunting, is something I don't personally know, because it's
so you don't think that, say, Dubai or the Emirates has reached that tipping point quite yet?
I think people are, for sure, they're reaching out. I've been coming to the Emirates for many years because I have connections here and I have family here, and I see a huge difference in how the ecosystem is growing, and it's really beautiful to see. And of course, the biggest kind of encouragement is more, startups growing, being successful, and kind of having success stories and a track record to attract others. I think the environment also in the US has become really difficult to live in. I've been in the US 20 years, and it'll be 20 years this year. It's hard to think. I'm originally from Beirut. I felt over the past few years being a little bit more uncomfortable and being a little bit more kind of like thinking to myself, like, why should I still be here? Why am I here? And so, I think the opportunity is to capture people who have that thinking and make it attractive.
Right.
You have moved the Reuters event here for the first year, so I guess we are
So
tracking
it's
some
working.
attention.
It's working for you.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Haiyang Ru, what about in the crypto world? You guys have just been here for a few months, right? So is there talent here, or do you have to import it?
To be very frank, I think Dubai has the highest density in terms of crypto talents. Yeah, in the world. Because, you know, in some other jurisdictions, for example, like Singapore, they passed the new, Digital Asset Act for the service providers. They actually kick out of some of the talents into other places. So we see a lot of people move here, in Dubai to establish their crypto exchange business, asset custodians, security services, a lot of talents here. So I think going forward, AI and crypto will converge eventually. So the talent pool here of the crypto assets area, I don't think it's a problem here.
Okay.
So by the way, on the sorry to add briefly, but on the crypto, we also have a lot of R&D push.
Yes.
Because I think what you spoke about is a bit the end of the value chain. But in the TII ecosystem, there is a huge push of R&D, which I think is quite peculiar globally.
Okay. Chiara, maybe there's a question from the audience that I'd love for you to tackle. In the absence of real sovereign AI factories enabling local ownership and control, how do you think of sovereignty in the presence of foreign dependence? In other words, is the industry here too dependent on foreign input?
Okay, this is a complex question to unpack. I think, first of all, let's talk about what sovereignty really means. In the sense that sovereignty means, do you keep your data and information within your ecosystem, in your country, or outside? So I think there is a level there and decision there that you need to do. And I think we had an earlier exchange in one of the smaller roundtable where we said that in reality, it's very important that you think through your data governance and you slice what is really important, identify what's your gold mine that keep to you, but you cannot keep everything to you, otherwise it gets too expensive. Now, on the second part of the question of the dependency, this is indeed a risk, but again, to quote the discussion that we had before, I think a gentleman rightfully said, but this is also the world, and we really need to learn to how to play in it, which means, yes, you just need to be smart and probably creating the right alliances. And I think even the UAE is thinking about investment in some other layer that they stack to try to break some dependency. But the reality is that's how it is. And we need to learn and govern and create guardrails to deal with it.
Okay. I'm going to, Haiyang, come to you just with a very cheeky question. There were reports last week that the group may be looking at a listing in Hong Kong. Is that something that you can confirm for us?
Oh, thank you for the inquiry. At this moment, I don't have any relevant information to disclose.
Good try.
Just before we wrap up, everyone around the world, whether you're here or in the US or Europe, wherever, Asia, is asking, are we in an AI bubble? So I'd just love kind of quick fire answer from each of you to wrap up.
I think for me, the most shocking, not so shocking, but kind of disturbing image I saw is a few weeks ago, I want to say a competitor to Reuters issued the investigation and had a chart that shows 7 big companies in AI, NVIDIA, OpenAI, and some of the others, and the level of investments that they have in each other. And it showed how these 7 companies had billions and billions of dollars of circular investments in each other. And for me, I knew that in my head, but I'd never seen that picture so dramatically. And it made me feel like there is a sense of kind of propping up the field, as well as we also learned from a Harvard study that if you remove AI data centers, the GDP in the US only grew 0.1% in 2025. So there are indicators and people are very worried about it. And I would say it's a conversation in every group talking about AI, it comes up. So,
Chiara, the view from here?
Because of this, I think that the make it or break it in 2026 is really the time to ROI. If we are able to translate AI and all that circular into impact into enterprises, we're good. Otherwise, we all gotta be worried.
Haiyang Ru, the last words to you.
I think for next year, we will see more convergence between AI and crypto, definitely for sure, especially like micropayments in AI interactions. So next year, probably we'll have more panels like this together with the AI talents and the crypto talents to discuss about the future.
Okay. Thank you all for being here today. Really appreciate it. Thanks for your thoughts.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you very much indeed, Simon. Super panel, thank you. And good try with the listing, the Hong Kong listing question, Simon. I guess that's what we do. Right. Mohammed Jamil Al-Ramahi has been the CEO of Mazda since 2016. Under his leadership, Mazda has grown into one of the world's leading clean energy companies, a global leader in renewable energy and green hydrogen.